All right, we're going to get started here. Thanks so much for joining us. This is our Q3, although first ever, Public AI Network community call. We hope to conduct these each quarter, and we're really excited to see the incredible turnout that we have for today's conversation. We are recording this conversation so that our friends can follow along after the fact and at home. Today we have a really great lineup. We have some conversations about public AI and what it is, some examples from the community with a deep dive on the public AI inference utility pilot that has just launched, really exciting, and a series of lightning talks from folks across the network. So grateful to have you all here. So I'm going to kick us off here. I'm B. Cavello. I am a director of emerging tech at the Aspen Institute, but I'm also one of the active members in the Public AI Network. And the Public AI Network is a broad community of folks from all different organizations and backgrounds from around the world. And before we dive into today's conversation, because some of you all I know are newer to these discussions, I thought it'd also be helpful to give a little bit of context on how we think about public AI. So for those who are new, public AI is really a way of thinking about AI and approaching building AI that centers the public. So it centers public access in terms of offering AI capabilities and even the capability to build AI systems at very low cost or even for free. It centers public accountability in terms of giving the public ultimate control over what gets built and building things that are aligned with and inspired by the goals of the public. And finally, it's sustainably public, meaning that you can have these other great things, but if they only last for a month or two until a system gets enclosed or until a project gets abandoned, then that's not quite as public as we would like to see. So when we talk about public AI and what makes it what it is, we have these kind of three pillars of understanding. And in the Public AI Network, if you want to check out more on this, we welcome you to go to publicai.network/whitepaper to read our take on public AI. But you can see that across the board, there are lots of things that share some of the attributes with public AI. And there's things that we think can always be made more public. But public AI is really about satisfying these goals of making sure that everyone has access, the public has a voice, and real governance, and also to make sure that these systems don't get enclosed. So even though many of these things we believe private AI can be made more public, we believe that open source AI can be public AI. As Nick Garcia says, if you love open source AI, add some public governance. Now you've got public AI, right? If you have some of these systems that are maybe a government instigated public AI system, making sure that it is sustainable and making sure that the public has access, right? There's all these ways that we can make different systems across the whole ecosystem more public. So to illustrate some examples of what public AI might be, and you'll have a easier view of this diagram in the white paper itself, there's a ton of different potential ways to build public AI systems. And so public AI systems can live at every layer of the public AI stack. A public AI system could live in the compute layer in the form of public compute. In the US, we have a proposal in California, Cal Compute, or the National AI Research Resource. It could live in the form of training data or some of the kind of inputs to the model. Also, the models themselves can be made public, and you'll hear a little bit about that today. And you can also see things after a model is originally built in the ways that people adapt these tools into products and applications, as well as the governance layer, which could happen at any layer of the stack, but especially toward the end here with public oversight and auditing, such as at the safety institutes. Um, Public AI can also exist across the AI stack. It can exist as a public AI utility. We'll be talking a little bit about that today. And there can also be specific examples that span some of these things, visions for public AI in education, in science, data set curation, etc. So there are these three pillars of public AI that we in the Public AI Network see as essential. And yet there are many, many things that public AI can be, right? Public AI is a movement, it is a community, it's an approach to thinking about AI, it's a new tech stack, it's so many different things. And so what we invite you today as you're joining us in this call and going forward is help us figure it out together, right? Public AI can be a lot of different things. It can take a lot of different forms. And there's so many different people who are contributing toward public AI and making it possible. So in that spirit, I want to turn it over to SJ Klein, who's joining us on the call here to talk a little bit about the shape of our network and our community, the work that is happening, and hopefully how you can get a little bit involved as well.
Thanks so much, Bea. Uh, the community currently includes a wide range of people. We have a few hundred people in our shared Slack, and we share an events calendar, and a lot of us put on events of very different sizes for other members of the community. And so we invite everyone here to involve yourself and involve your work with the work of others. People are still introducing themselves here in the chat. And in particular, we have a collection of events and contributors on the website. So for the people who have been part of the network for a long time, we've been encouraging people to add a little more detail about themselves and links to their work so that we can help promote it across our networks. And for people who are just getting involved for the first time, we would love to hear more about you.
All right. SJ, is there anything else that you want to present on the screen before we transition?
No, that's great. We should get into the lightning talks, which are the best demonstration.
Excellent. So if you haven't finished the intake form, no worries. You can send it in afterward. But we want to capture and celebrate all the incredible work that is going on across the network. There's a ton of really interesting projects that are happening, and we're really excited in particular to be hearing from some examples today, and especially one that quite a few of you were involved in. So thank you for your leadership in that work. On that note, I'm going to turn it over to Joal Stein, who I believe will be joined by some collaborators to talk about the public AI inference utility that just launched. Josh, take it away.
Hey, folks. So I'm happy to do this as a more of a Q&A. I'll take folks through kind of the quick demonstration and a little bit of background of what the inference utility is coming from. But I'm very happy to just jump in and dig into your questions. I will mention, unfortunately, Joseph Lowe is one of the lead engineers on the project, could not join us because he's literally on a plane right now. But I will do my best to give feedback and background on the technical specifics as well. Okay, so let's hop in and, all right, let me put a little new window and do a little bit of sharing. So for those of you who don't know, I just shared the link. The public AI inference utility is at publicai.co. Don't go to publicai.com. That is, we have nothing to do with whatever happens to be there. But publicai.co is the public AI inference utility. It is, on some level, I think the world's first, or one of the world's first, public inference technical stacks and services that's dedicated to serving public and sovereign AI models. So you can see here, we are the official launch partners for Apertus, which is Swiss AI's leading, the model that they just released last Tuesday to the world, which is effectively one of the leading open source models, and almost certainly the leading kind of model coming out of Europe. So it's one of the leading sort of sovereign and public AI models coming out from Swiss AI. The you can see Imanol here who helped train it, along with different contributors to the project. That's Joseph over there, being very relieved that the thing is done and shipped. So what's going on in Infinite Utility? Well, actually, why don't we just you can go through and check it out. You can ask, what's public AI? So there's a free tier version corresponding to the not logged in version of ChatGPT. You can ask it questions. This is actually serving a purchase 8B, which is the smaller version of the model. There's a 70B model that you can get when you log in. You can have a conversation. It is very straightforward. It's just a chat app, and it works. You can log in, and you're talking to Switzerland. So how are you doing? The so sometimes there's a lot of kinks to be worked out for sure. But the fundamental point here is that we have a functioning example of public AI running in the real world that is extremely easy to access. All you have to do is go through a very basic auth flow, and you can start using public AI. It is not something that we are talking about. It is something that lives and is working in the world. And also, I'll mention, is currently number 6 on Hugging Face. Funnily enough, it is actually the only European model, where, let's say, non-American, non-Chinese model that is in the top 10 in the Hugging Face at the moment. It is the platform is relatively fully featured. It's based on an open source web stack called OpenWeb UI, which includes things like pool use, web search. There's a RAG model built in. We built this funny little tool called Schweizerdeutsch. For those of you who speak German, evidently find it quite funny, though I've actually gotten quite a few complaints from the Swiss about it, that it doesn't always quite work and sometimes uses the German B instead of the Swiss German SS. Evidently, the Swiss version of the Sun gave the Swiss AI a lot of flack about it, and we spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to tune the system prompt to get rid of and fix those details. It's not just Switzerland though. We're also hosting Singapore, so you can talk to the Singapore effectively national AI model Sea Lion v3. So you can see the exact name. It's the so Sea Lion v3 is fine-tuned off of Gemma from Google, and it is also quite functional. You can play with these things in tandem. So it's like, you can tell me about yourself, please. And you can see Switzerland is currently hosted off of AW infrastructure in Zurich, Switzerland, where Singapore is hosted in Singapore by AI Singapore. One of them is definitely more verbose than the other. Let's say that's a feature, not a bug. Well, anyways, actually, maybe this is a good opportunity to show you some of the stuff underneath. So you go to public AI, you can access the chat utility. There's a fully functional API. We currently have around 300 developers. We actually had there are several apps built on top of this gateway now. We had the first app ship a week ago, literally the day we launched, which was actually kind of incredible. You can register an account here. It's a separate login, so just you can do a separate registration flow, and you can get a developer API key and start playing around with it. The entire thing is open source. So if you go to github.com/forpublicai, you'll see a bunch of repositories sitting in here, including the website for the publicai.network. But if you go to chat.publicai.co, there are some growing list of issues we will get to. But in the community chats, for example, you'll see things like the system prompts, totally public. You can make a PR right now for it and say, change the system prompt for Switzerland, and change what it looks like for every user that's using a purchase. In this case, you are Swiss, your national origin is Switzerland. And there's a lot of instructions, including in German, to say, like, okay, don't use the B, use the SS. But a lot of this is actually inherited from Swiss AI, but we are trying to build out some community governance around it. Right now, very basically, it's just some people pinging around in a GitHub issue thread of like, hey, what's going on with this system prompt, asking questions, giving answers. Let's see. There's a lot I think I could say about the apprentice itself, how it was trained by Swiss AI over the course of over half a year and many millions of dollars, and plans ahead for partnering with Spain, with Germany, with other countries to launch additional models on the public AI inference utility. But I'm also happy to just take some questions and have a dialogue with the folks here.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Josh. You've gotten some excitement and a couple of questions already in the chat. If folks want to raise their question over audio, I welcome you to use the Zoom raise hand function under the React menu. It looks like a little heart. Or if you're not comfortable voicing over your question and you'd like me to give voice to it, I'm happy to read questions from the chat. Renata, go ahead.
Yes, I have a very simple practical question, and I want to understand whether it is a resources issue or a capacity issue on why the Swiss. I was very excited with the Swiss announcement, and then I saw Amazon Cloud, and that went like, like a. Not, I have nothing against, but everything against some providers. And one of the things that I want to understand is whether it is a capacity issue, because often it is, okay, no other can match what we require for such a beast. Or it was a resources issue. In that case, resources and Switzerland. I think that it could be solved in the future. So I want to understand whether it was a decision based on resources or on capacity, and if it's based in resources, whether the Swiss model is open to swap to a Swiss or European or African or Asian provider that is not one of the big tech giants. Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of feedback and pushback on this. Given that, of course, Apertus is a sovereign model and AWS is, owned by a large American company, for sure. So what happened is we were introduced to AWS by Swiss AI themselves. So the model trainers, the national lab, so EPF, basically a consortium involving ETH Zurich, EPFL, and Lausanne, basically said, hey, we've been talking to AWS. They want to support our launch, and we would really love if you talk to them. So that's basically how we actually got in touch with AWS and worked out this initial partnership. So AWS contributed around, let's say, give or take around 124,000 worth of compute credits. And by the way, so the compute to run this is definitely not cheap. We're burning at around like $2,000 a day right now on the compute in terms of like just average serving the requests we're getting. And AWS has been very helpful in providing that infrastructure. I should also just be fair. The AWS infrastructure in this case is based in Zurich. So it's their nodes in Zurich. And the Swiss and German engineers who have been helping us with that have been actually very, very helpful. So there's Nicolas and Malte have helped out engineering some of the backend infrastructure. Now, there are also other compute providers. So Exascale is a Swiss company with no clusters in Switzerland, but mostly in Austria, actually. The Kudo is a UK company who's also putting in compute, which has clusters in all around the world. But in this particular, we have a bare metal node running in Norway. And we also have contributions from AI Singapore and the Australian National Computational Infrastructure, and from CSCS itself, which is the Swiss National Supercomputing Center. However, a lot of the compute innovations have come a little bit later, and it's just like, it actually takes quite a bit of effort to set up a bunch of raw compute nodes. And for better or worse, AWS has basically drop-in infrastructure that we've been able to just like get things up and running. So the plan is to, use and to balance, we have all the load balancers set up to absorb and use more of this kind of like all the other inference providers while sort of balancing out sort of the way that we use AWS. Ultimately, my plan or hope is to delegate more of this work to basically a more sovereign Swiss team that will be managing decisions around like who is actually deploying this, how is it getting deployed, what is the system prompt, and I think that kind of governance still needs to be set up, and we actually have like a group of around like 40 plus now Swiss volunteers that we're trying to figure out like how to bring on board into this project. And the hope is that, okay, we're going to be able to pass some of these decision making to them, and eventually maybe to the Swiss state, given that this is public AI. My own hypothesis is that like for various reasons, you're probably going to want to keep like around some percentage of your compute, your back-end inference on like from global providers. That would include AWS, but also things like, Azure, but also Swiss, while some of it being sovereign compute. And it's kind of up to the user themselves. They're going to decide, hey, what is the balance? Do I only want to use sovereign compute? But it is something we are actively working on.
In the interest of time, Josh, I'm seeing you have a couple other questions in the chat. Do you want to give voice to any of those?
Yeah. I'm just going to just do it randomly. What is the strategy around having a single UI from CHAD interacting with a bunch of different state AIs? So actually, the reality behind this is that the state AIs, quote unquote, from these national labs, they are very, very poorly equipped and set up to offer a user-facing website. Even though they have these, giant supercomputers, they don't have the kind of legal setup to handle sort of user data. They generally don't have the engineers and not really focused on product. They're just focused on training, right? Which is why in this case, we are building this utility to host these AIs. There's other strategy around why it makes sense for there to be a single UI, which relates to kind of this newer approach around what we're calling a kind of AI multilateralism, of which the public AI inference utility is one of the first examples, where it's like there's something very, very clearly multilateral going on, and we're kind of exploring and fleshing that out. And it has to do with the fact that ultimately these state AIs, they have a hard time competing individually with, the giant frontier labs like OpenAI and Anthropic. Do I have time to answer one more question, or should we?
More. Go for it.
Sure. Let me just go back up. Is there Nick? So Sean asked, why not V4? I assume you mean C-Line V4, right? Yeah. So that did get released just recently. It actually has to do with AI Singapore themselves and their API. So right now, the API they gave us is hosting V3. I imagine that will shortly get updated to V4. That is why not V4. Does it support tool calling? Yes. So there is tool calling support. Obviously, there is going to be a version of the model that has even better tooling support, interaction support soon. But I will let Joseph, and we'll post an FAQ with some of these results soon. And maybe I'll just throw in one last question. I know B said, great question, so I'll try to highlight it. Can someone define sovereign compute? What makes it sovereign? Oh gosh. Actually, this is a really long question.
Sorry, Josh.
Okay. I'm going to try to really quick stab at it. I want to sort of give time back to the lightning talks. I think there are different variations of sovereign compute. You could sort of say there are sovereign cloud providers which have like various levels of security on it. So obviously you could say it's like located inside the country itself. It's controlled by the sort of like perhaps owned by, as in like public compute. It's directly funded by the state or state-related actors. So this is happening, for example, in the EU, in Canada. Sometimes, yeah, it's more privately owned, but sort of like sovereign sort of, they have like MOUs with the sort of with the state or with local institutions. And sometimes it's just like, oh, there's like extra security. So you can have basically kind of like a semi-sovereign setup, even with a global cloud provider. Depends on their security restrictions, where the servers are located, things like that. So there's different gradations of sovereign.
Thanks so much, Josh, and thanks to everyone for your great questions. We welcome you to continue the conversation, and I will just post again in the chat that a place where a lot of these conversations takes place is the Public AI Network Slack. So if you would like to join the Slack, we would love to see you there and have you participate in these conversations with us. With that, we're going to hear in a briefer form a series of lightning talks and quick interventions on a variety of different projects and public AI initiatives across the broader network. So, Catherine, I see you're on the call here. Are you able to jump in briefly?
Sorry.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to hear from Catherine first on our Protopian AI Fiction Prize. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. I literally coming to you from Los Angeles, so just got back from walking the dogs. Sorry, I was hoping to get back onto actual computer and not phone by then. So great to be on this call. Catherine Geanuracos. The Protopian Prize is a new initiative of the Public AI Network. It is not formally launched yet. It was Josh got some initial funding for it. The goal is to help both policymakers, technologists, but also the general public sort of imagine positive futures related to the potential of AI. So we're working with a small team to build out both a set of stellar judges, the infrastructure for judging the short fiction prize, and also sort of thinking about it potentially as a way to connect sort of the more sciencey part of this network to the culture world. And as Angelino sort of thinking of film, TV, there's a lot of history of institutes and organizations connecting experts into folks who create culture. So we do not have a launch date yet. We have a small team working on this. I would encourage you to join the Speculative Fiction channel on the Slack. And we would love your help. There's a bunch of people working on this, not just me. And we're looking to get some truly exciting judges. And hopefully we'll be launching this fall.
Fantastic. We're so excited. I think that in many ways, public AI is about expanding people's idea of possibility. And what better way to do that than this? For our next lightning talk, we will hear from SJ on auditing models in public.
Fantastic. Thanks, B. Great. So one of the things that we often talk about, which came up already in the discussion of the inference utility, is how much of your stack do you want to be public? And the very first things that people really wanted to be public before there were high functioning AI models was public transparency, some kind of public oversight of how we evaluate models to find out what they're doing, how they're functioning, what risks there might be. And so in 2025, the state of model auditing is still extremely ad hoc. Most internal evaluations and audits are done differently at every platform. There isn't an adopted standard. Frontier models let a few third parties run evals for maybe a week pre-release, and there are only a handful of organizations that are doing this persistently. The evals are mostly for capabilities. They're easily saturated, and they're mostly focused on a handful of safety categories that were defined a couple of years ago, which don't necessarily get at the issues that affect individuals, for instance, who might end up becoming addicted to their AI partners, or developing some kind of psychosis. And there's generally no agreed set of behaviors that people are testing for. So what do we need? We want a universe with open models, shared tooling, reproducible evals, some standard for how you access models, some standard for what is audited and how, and then public compute in order to make this routine and make sure that it's not dependent on the people who train the models allowing other people to use their compute to evaluate them. So currently, when it comes to audit standards, there are individual groups in the half dozen entities that are doing this regularly who have produced things like standards. UKAC has an inspect framework for publishing evals. Meter has a standard for tasks that you can rerun. A lot of them are reasonably narrow. They really need more help with tooling, building a whole ecosystem, developing policy at the national level. People who are interested in working on this and have done other standards work, this still needs more effort. I think the EU, through the EU AI Act, has done as much as anyone to try and move the ecosystem towards this, but that needs a lot of help. Technical access standards, a friend of the network, NDIF, has a couple deep inference fabrics. They're basically state-funded, university-funded compute pools for doing evaluation. They're only really suitable for the smaller models right now, not for frontier models. We have NDF in the US and EDIF in the EU, but we need that kind of inference capacity in other regions too. And then technical R&D for efficient audits. We need inspectable tools that can run meta evals, that can interpret evals and figure out how well they're working. There are some existing tools like Docent that give you a way to insert your own evaluator into an existing framework. Other things like Inspect, you sort of have to fork the repository and modify it a bit if you want to run a version with your own evals. I think we're going to hear from Weevals, which is a beautiful community solution for how we can all come together, share, and edit one another's evals. And then we need compute for evaluators. So there are, I think, currently many people in this ecosystem are working on individual pieces. It needs more. It needs more glue to hold the whole thing together. So whenever we start talking about national or international infrastructure, especially when we're talking about infrastructure that is not bounded by country borders, it's very important to remember this is one of the reasons. One of the reasons that you want international, collaborative, multilateral infrastructure is it's ridiculous if the people who are doing something essential, like evaluating a model for the world, have to stop because they can only do it for people in their country, run servers in their country.
Awesome. Thank you so much, SJ. And I think that you have some links and examples of things to share as well. So really grateful for all of these very specific examples that you've called out here. There's so much happening. I'm going to speak a little bit on behalf of Kevin because unfortunately he was not able to join us here to talk about the AI Opportunity Inventory. This is an initiative that a bunch of different members across the Public AI Network have been involved in. So the AI Opportunity Inventory, if you're familiar with the AI Incident database or inventory, this is sort of a complement to that to help to flesh out the universe of perspectives on AI and the different things that are happening in this space. So the inference inventory, according to Kevin, who is involved, I'm involved actually, our team at the Aspen Institute, at Berkeley, Brown, Seed AI, the University of Texas School of Law, where Kevin is based. Brandon, our very own from the Public AI Network, has been driving a lot of the work in this work. And the goal of the inventory is to identify uses of AI that might not be receiving the attention or news that they ought to. that warrant additional study because of their potential to contribute to public problems or public good. So, similar to how the news is often dominated by the scary negative stories, the goal of the AI opportunity inventory is to shine a light on the good AI news, and to differentiate it from things that are just PR campaigns or advertising, but really ground it in some analysis and understanding of what the possibility space looks like. So this is a project that is underway right now, picking up momentum. There's going to be a release of an MVP, a minimum viable inventory, by the end of September for people to participate and contribute their examples or stories or use cases. So definitely appreciate people submitting and encouraging people to share the form to submit these AI opportunities when it goes live. And the way that this is going to work is that there's going to be kind of the raw database of the inventory. So submissions will be shared with all the interested stakeholders to evaluate. But then there's also a team who's developing a taxonomy and a vetting process to be able to categorize and organize this information so that people can get more information about how AI is actually impacting people today. So you can help by spreading the word, joining the vetting team if you're interested in that. And if you want to get involved, contact Kevin. He's happy to loop people over email. Sorry Kevin couldn't be here today, but I'm honored to give him voice. And I'm going to turn it over next to Joel.
Thank you very much, B, and thank you, SJ and Catherine. I'm here to talk about WeVal. And so evals, as we know, are an opportunity to sort of set priorities of the AI ecosystem. And so our goal is to make sure that people and more communities have their values, priorities, and expertise represented in those evals and benchmarks. And so what WeVal does, it allows people to collaboratively design and run rigorous evaluations that make AI systems accountable, fair, contextually relevant on everything from niche professional domains to the everyday traits we all care about, like safety, honesty, and helpfulness. We currently have a growing repository of dozens of evals with the capacity to do hundreds or thousands of evals. These are often made in collaboration with global nonprofits that represent a specific community, and as well as domain experts that focus on things like mental health or child safety. And we have the ability to create multi-turn evals. Right now, we do a lot of prompt response evals, and we also have the capacity for system prompt comparisons as well. And we are planning to eventually build multimodal and other forms of evals here. These are all forkable, open source, and people can browse the universe of evals and figure out which ones make sense for their context, and then adapt and tune it to their own needs there as well. And so, just as Wikipedia became a platform for democratized knowledge, we're aiming to sort of democratize eval creation, making sure that anyone can have evals to represent what they want to measure. And you can find us at weval.org. We are currently working with a lot of different partners. We are looking for more partners who either want to make evals or have ideas for how to improve it, or to help on the storytelling and interaction part of how do people explore evals and learn from them. So that is my short, tight pitch here for WeVal. Feel free to contact me. I'll put my email in the chat, and thank you all.
Thank you, Joel. And we got to see a great demo of WeVal during one of our last Public AI Network weekly calls, which take place on Thursdays. So welcome you all to participate in those. We'll share some more info later. But it is a really cool platform, and we're excited to hopefully maybe get some of the inference utility models in that as well. Next up, we have Bobbi with Zones of Friction. And Bobbi, I think you're going to take over the screen share from me.
So wonderful being here. Thank you, B. Thanks, everyone. So briefly, this is a project about zones of friction and truly expanding our creative capacity for working through that and figuring out where friction can be constructive, where can it be really negative and have limiting and negative implications for people in the way they specifically interact with AI system. And truly, how we negotiate such frictions, and what do they mean in the context of AI risks? And we've seen technology companies deploy some kinds of sort of friction interventions that have been very intentional. For example, in the context of misinformation or other kind of content moderation issues, they've been like primarily an area where this field has existed. And I have some prior background in specifically sort of AI auditing and evaluation in the content moderation space, where a lot of this sort of was inspired from. Here, briefly, my inspiration for friction is truly what anthropologist Anna Tsing writes about in her work here, The Friction, the Ethnography of Global Connection, where she describes it as this awkward, unequal, unstable, and creative qualities of interconnection across differences, documenting the historical events of how corporate deforestation halted in Indonesia, at least temporarily. She shares that the process was one of, quotes, collaboration, not as consensus making, but rather an opening for productive confusion, observing that knowledge grows through multiple layers of collaboration as both empathy and betrayal. So truly, I was very inspired by her fieldwork back, I guess, 5, 6 years ago, where I was looking at feminist science and technology studies, and especially what can we learn from that field in the context of AI auditing and evaluation and governance. In my day job, I work on legal evaluations and sort of the notion of responsible AI from like kind of legal and policy perspective. And what I mean by that is here defined by this AI RMF framework. It has to do a lot with these other notions of safety, governance, trust and safety, and evaluations. And usually when we think of friction, right, we think about these kinds of emerging legal requirements and lawsuits that present a lot of friction for technology companies to put out models and products in the market. There's a lot of issues with transparency and third-party data and model documentation and access that cause a lot of friction for developers and people that want to be involved in the AI ecosystem. And there's also a lot of friction in the context of how people and domain experts, like, for example, in the healthcare space where we're doing a lot of work, there is a lot of sort of some kind of friction around, again, transparency or other kinds of issues around consent disclosure, especially around what is causing AI failures and harms. My whole point with this project is that friction is a leverage point. And the guiding question is that what if we could make the safe things easier or less friction and the high risk things harder or more friction? In the appreciation of time, I'm not going to go into detail, but truly the idea is to build out sort of a collection of friction interventions that study or kind of lay out the landscape of what those could be and how those could aid the evaluation and mitigation of AI risks, fostering appropriate reliance, encouraging reflection and AI literacy. And there is a Substack. So truly the inspiration is to also engage with a human behavior, cognitive science inspired understanding of friction in the context of human decision making and how that can be very beneficial for people. And then also the sort of speculative design and design fiction approach to really expand that sort of creative space. And I guess I would quickly sort of highlight that I literally just published an interview with a solarpunk fiction writer, Chris Muscato, who does a beautiful job at sort of integrating AI in one of his latest stories. And this was done in collaboration with Joal Stein, who's very active in the MetaGov community that this is sort of part of as well. And last slide, this is a sort of the theory of change to sort of expand our creative capacity to host constructive frictions and how that empowers improved AI literacy, understanding, and choice. And truly sort of the outcomes of this project are doing expert interviews with people in this kind of weird intersection of the AI ecosystem and kind of being an outlet for just speculative fiction short stories, artistic interventions, design thinking prototypes, whatever that form those kind of friction interventions take. And lastly, just sort of sharing and learning from each other. And I would truly appreciate any feedback or questions. And I'm easy to find on that speculative fiction website. But would truly love to meet and have a deeper conversation with people. And that was that. Thank you so much, Bea.
Thank you so much, Bobbi. It's been such a joy and hearing from everyone. And I thought that before I jump into talking about our last lightning talk here, which is a project that I'm deeply involved in on community-aligned benchmarks, it might be also helpful to zoom out a little bit and talk a little bit about how all of these things are fitting into the vision of public AI. So, we talked about at the beginning here, public AI being this vision of AI built in a way that has, broad public access, strong public accountability, and is sustainably public. And we've touched on a variety of these different things today. Certainly access in the form of the inference utility, accountability with WeVal and some of the auditing and some of the presentations we've just heard. And I think that one of the spaces that we really want to grow into, and we'll hear more on this with the Public AI seminar in the year to come on kind of sustainable models, business models related to public AI. So welcome you all to continue to engage in that. If you're not familiar with the Public AI seminar, it's a really awesome opportunity to hear from experts in the space. If you want to check it out, it is at publicai.network/seminar. I've just dropped it in the chat. So, a lot of the work that I've been involved in the Public AI Network has been focused on this accountability pillar. And I want to talk a little bit about how this fits in with the other things, the conversations that are taking place broadly around AI. So a lot of people, no matter how excited many of us might be about the potential for public AI, a lot of people are right now feeling like AI is not working for them, right? We see people posting memes, saying like, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do the art and writing, not the AI to do art and writing so I have to do laundry and dishes. Or people who are wanting AI to work toward the public good, like in medical diagnosis, but believe that that's not what's happening. Of course, we know that this is one of the things that's happening. And so it's incumbent on us to kind of focus energy in the things that are really going to be beneficial to the world and really are going to help people to realize the visions of AI that they want to see. And so with that in mind, I want to talk a little bit about benchmarks and why we think that they're such a potent opportunity for us in the public AI space. So for those not familiar, benchmarks are essentially standardized tests. They're ways that AI researchers measure the progress of their AI models and decide how advanced a system is. And so what we've heard about today are a bunch of different examples of interventions at different layers of the AI stack. So just to familiarize you a little bit, if you're newer to the space, when you're building an AI system, first you want to define what is that about? Then you gather all this data. We hear a lot about data in model building. Then there's actually the construction of the AI model, the training process. Then there's evaluation, where we check to make sure that the model does the things that we want. And then you deploy it in the form of an inference utility or another product. And then there's usually ongoing monitoring to make sure that the AI system is performing in the way that you want. And, a lot of the work of evals happens at this monitoring stage, right? We receive models from AI developers, and our best bet for making sure that they're publicly accountable is for us to actually check on them during the monitoring stage once they're already out in the world. But there's also work, and SJ talked about this a bit, to work on the evaluation of the models while they're still kind of in development. How do we actually continue to check and audit and make sure that these systems are performant in the ways that we want? And benchmarks are another form of evaluation, but one of the things that's really powerful about benchmarks is that they're also used in stage one, in defining the goal. We know that AI researchers care about benchmarks, right? If benchmarks are the standardized test, AI researchers often teach to the test. They often build systems according to what the goals of what a quote unquote advanced AI model are. And therefore, if we want to change what they teach, if we want to change what models get built, we need to build better tests and make it easier for people to build the things that we want to see. And so in the spirit of what Bobbi shared around frictions, we want to make it as easy as possible for people to do the right thing. And in this case, that means hearing from the public and developing benchmarks, standardized tests that actually work for people and support the goals of quote unquote advanced AI that we want to see. So welcome you all to participate in this conversation with us. There's a benchmarks channel in the Slack. You can also check out the Community Aligned AI Benchmarks project on the Aspen Digital website. I'll drop in the chat. But there's a lot of work going on across this ecosystem, and we would love to jam with more folks as well. So hopefully today has given you a little taste, a little teaser of the broad array of things that are happening across the public AI network, whether you are someone who's really interested in the compute part of the stack or actually delivering models and the inference layer, or whether you're interested in some of these different projects around accountability. There's so many different ways to get engaged and so many different ways to make AI more public. And so we're really excited to be working in collaboration with all of you and to expand our network and to include more people in the public AI process. So a huge thank you to our speakers today. I'm going to ask folks in a couple seconds here to unmute so that we can give, as our tradition, give folks a round of applause as part of our participating in our first ever Public AI Network community call. And then we're going to save the last few minutes here for some breakouts and community networking discussion, but that part will not be recorded. So in 3 seconds here, if you will come off mute and give our speakers a raucous round of applause. 3, 2, 1. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining us.